So hello and good evening to everyone. A very warm welcome to you this evening. I was thinking earlier that I think it's quite significant that we're having this event today on Heritage Day. And I was just thinking that wouldn't it be wonderful if we could all hold peace as our heritage, that we come from various faiths, various cultures, traditions, but this one common quality, or perhaps right as well, maybe, is what can bind us all together. And so it's just lovely that everyone's together. We're also live streaming on YouTube, so I think there might be some participants there. But just to get a feel, if you'd like to share where you're from, maybe just type out in the chat so we can see who's with us in the room. Because if it was something live, then we'd get a chance to introduce each other to ourselves. So if you'd like to just chat where you're from and maybe just say a little hello, that would be lovely. So I'm Nita and I'm currently based in Cape Town. So Cape Town's in the house today. If anyone would like to just put something in the chat. So this evening's topic is making peace real. And I came across a lovely phrase by Mother Teresa, and I'm sure you've heard it as well, but it just serves as a lovely reminder, especially today and the times that we're in. And I'm quoting, "We do not need guns and bombs to bring peace. We need love and compassion." And this quote just fits into the core of International Day of Peace, which we know is celebrated on the 21st of September every year as by the UN. The theme for this year's Day of Peace is Shaping Peace Together. And the United Nations this year is really using this theme to encourage people to celebrate the day by spreading compassion, kindness, and hope, specifically in the face of the pandemic that we've been experiencing globally. And so the pandemic has emerged as a common enemy in the world today. And so this provides a lovely opportunity to come together and bring in that energy of peace to help support every single human being. It's also reminded us that we all are interconnected and that we need to work together to overcome not just this global challenge, but I think all global challenges. And just holding that as the focus, I'd like to take this moment and invite you into, perhaps we can collectively just hold a moment of compassionate silence and peace as we remember those that have lost their lives as a result of this pandemic. And I know within the BK community, we just lost someone very dear to us, Sister Shirley, and I'm sure there's many that you might know of who have experienced some challenges and difficulties as a result of this pandemic. And so together with all of those, but also those many, many frontline workers who put their lives every day at risk, if we can just take a moment of silence and just hold that energy of peace and compassion. Thank you. So this evening's program is really about not just talking about peace, but really creating how does peace work in a practical way. And to facilitate this evening's dialogue, I'd like to introduce Sarah Oliver. And Sarah is the Global Youth coordinator for the United Religious Initiative, also known as URI, which works to unite people from all beliefs to create community and to solve local and global challenges. Sarah is locally based in Cape Town, and she also works with the Gold Trust and the Cape Town Interfaith Initiative in running an interfaith intercultural schools program. Sarah's quest is to see the interfaith peace-building world take seriously the call for global social justice. She believes that by bringing together the ancient wisdom of our traditions and religions with the fire of social activism, we can create a more socially just and peaceful world. So I'm going to hand you over to Sarah, who will take us through most of the program. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Sister Nita. It's such an honor to be here. Om Shanti, Shalom, Salam, and greetings of peace to you all. Thank you so much for joining us for what I hope is going to be a rich and soul-feeding conversation. As Sister Nita has said, it's International Day of Peace has been this week, and so in my line of work, at least, this has been a very busy week, and we've had events right from the UN level to grassroots level across the world, people coming together to recognize the importance of creating peace in our world. And that's exactly what we're here to do this evening. And I'm delighted to be joined by a multi-faith panel. I think there's such richness when we come together from our different faith perspectives and traditions to offer the wisdoms that we can bring and share together. And so the value of a multi-faith space is very exciting. And I hope that we will honor Sister Nita's call to making peace real, and so to, in our responses and conversation together, to really dive into the depth of what that means for each of us individually and in our communities. So thank you once again. I'll be moderating the conversation, and I'm delighted to be joined by an incredible lineup of speakers who I have the honor of participating in this conversation with. I know we're still possibly waiting for one of our speakers, but I know that Rabbi Sahar Shahed is here, and Reverend Thandi Nhlengetwa and Brother John Ndiritu are with us. And so I'm going to introduce each person one at a time, if that's okay, and introduce you and then let you respond to an opening initial question, which is to really help us frame the kind of context of what peace means and looks like in this current context of our world and in the global pandemic that we're currently in. The question that I'd like to start the conversation with is for each of you to share from your religious and spiritual traditions. How have you contextualized or made sense of the time and the world that we're in at the moment? So that's the starting question, and we're going to have 2 or 3 minutes per person, and then we'll come back for another round. And I'm wondering if, Rabbi, we could begin with you. I will just introduce you and share with our viewers and friends who are here with us in the Zoom room that Rabbi Sarah is an Israeli progressive rabbi who serves at the Beit Emanuel Progressive Synagogue in Parktown, Johannesburg, and has been there since 2013. He is the current chair of the South African Association of Progressive Rabbis. Prior to arriving in South Africa, he was involved in peace activism as a teacher, the executive director of the Solar Peace Project, broadcasting on All for Peace Radio, and co-chair of the education committee of the NGO Peace Forum. On these experiences, he has written a book entitled Peace on God's Land and a documentary video project called Gate Was Sealed. Rabbi Shahed is involved in a range of cultural and social initiatives promoting interfaith dialogue and social justice. And so I invite you, Rabbi, from the Jewish perspective in particular, how have you been able to contextualize the current moment that we are in?
Okay, thanks for the kind introduction. Just one correction, I'm the previous chair. We have a new Rabbi Julia Margolis is our current chair. Okay, so I want to say, and thanks for including me in the discussion. We clergy, I've seen a nice video with the Dalai Lama, and they ask him, so what's the message of COVID? And I said, honestly, I'm not sure. And he repeated the message that we are a social animal, a social creature, and we must be kind of kind to one another. That was his main message. So I want to kind of start with this. If somebody tell you, yeah, this is what God's wanted, this is the message, and you should be a bit suspicious toward it. It's okay that we don't know. 1, 2. There's always a crisis. There's always a crisis somewhere. There's always weather outside, and people always live and people always die. So the question really is, regardless what the condition may be. So now we don't have a world war. There is a pandemic. The real question is who you are and how you live your life in the time given to you now. Are you open to the Spirit in the time given to you now? It almost doesn't matter. So we got this generation on our dice, a pandemic, and there's all kind of misfortunes. I know people, their house burnt in America. There's always a crisis. And the days of COVID are not different. These days are singular and interesting. But the main thing is, this is our shift. And this is not the end of days, religiously. This is not the end of days. And the fact that there's so much to do regarding the COVID and the climate and all that is to do is an indication to that. It's straightening it up. There's much to do. And we live today, as we lived before COVID, in a world which was not redeemed. The world is not yet redeemed. And there is a gap between spirit and the reality. And this world is still not the dwelling of the kingdom of heaven yet. And it's our job to make it like this. So the COVID, if you ask what it means, indication we have to intensify our efforts by repentance, good deeds, education, building communities, tikkun olam. And this is the theological understanding that we acting. And in this regard, there's no dispute within Jewish denominations. We all see it in that. I haven't spoken to all, but this is very, it's an indication that the world has not yet been redeemed. And we need to intensify our effort in teshuvah and maasim tovim and repentance and in good deeds.
Thank you, Rabbi. Definitely, it brings it back to the self in terms of the responsibility that's needed to create the world around us. Thank you for those opening words. Well, our second panelist who is with us is Reverend Thandi Nhlengetwa, who is one of the pioneers of the New Thought movement in South Africa, having taught universal spiritual principles for more than 3 decades. She is a recipient of the Sir John Templeton Global Pathfinder Award. She graduated from the Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute, Kansas City, Missouri, USA, and became the first ordained Unity minister in South Africa. She is a member of the Association of Global New Thought, Agape Worldwide Spiritual Communities, and Unity International Council, and founder of the Unity Worldwide Ministries Africa region. So Reverend Thandi, we welcome you into the space, and it would be wonderful to hear your initial thoughts on how the current moment is understood from your perspective. Reverend Thandi, you'll just need to unmute yourself. Hang on.
With myself.
There you go.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I want to first thank the Kumaris for honoring the International Day of Peace, and on this particularly auspicious day in our country, where we are honoring the heritage and the rich diversity of our nation. And we learn to practice peace one step at a time, one choice at a time, and one day at a time. And peace in our New Thought movement is not only the absence of war. Peace is both an individual and collective state of consciousness. Making peace real and practicing peace is a multidimensional, continuous life process within the context of society. So the question is now, in this pandemic, within the context of this pandemic, how do we find peace? It first begins with our own personal connection with the peace within ourselves. As I say, it's making peace is multi-dimensional. It's on 4 levels. The first one is on the personal level. And in Unity, we've got a song that says, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." We need to realize that an individual is the first unit of society. And when we say, "Let peace begin with me," we're letting peace begin within my own consciousness. In this pandemic, we realize that we are interconnected. We are one. Peace is being more compassionate, firstly, towards our own self, making time for ourselves to go into our inner being, our inner consciousness, taking time for self-care. This time during a pandemic, it has given us time to self-reflect, to understand that we are one, we are connected. Anything that we do affects other people. It affects one another. We are not separate. So we center ourselves in our oneness of spirit. And we choose to honor, love, and appreciate ourselves as unique, loving, caring, and capable individuals. When the director opened, the service this morning, you recognize the caregivers that are putting themselves out there, out of love, out of compassion. We are realizing the deep caring of humanity that has been exposed by this pandemic. So peace begins at an individual level to start with, and also at interpersonal level. So what we do at interpersonal level? At interpersonal levels, we educate ourselves. We learn about universal human rights. We learn about issues of diversity, issues of ecology, issues of caring for our planet. And this pandemic also has put squarely in our shoulders the issues of international human rights. Our Bill of Rights actually points us that the human universal rights are not only applicable between state and the individual, but also horizontally between individuals. Now, the horizontal application of these human rights is for us to respect and honor the inherent worth of every human being. That is a practice of peace. Practicing peace also entails dedicating ourselves to these fundamental rights of every human being in terms of justice, respect, and equality. During this time of pandemic, what do we as religious and interfaith communities do? We need to acknowledge that we've had cultural and religious barriers that have divided humankind. During these times, we can begin to work together in broadening and deepening understanding, respect, and cooperation among the world's religious and spiritual communities through initiatives that foster interreligious dialogue like this one and engagement. We need to also look into our own. We need to identify and overcome our own rigid biases. And instead of, and in place of that, when we look into our own biases, when we self-reflect, because this time has given us an opportunity, you know, during lockdown to also self-reflect and look at ourselves. Where are we going as humanity? If one little virus can affect us, you know, globally, what can we as humanity broaden and deepen our understanding and respect and cooperation amongst our spiritual communities? So we need to foster these initiatives of interreligious dialogues and engagement. And we need also to overcome our own biases, to overcome our own, you know, our own tendency to look away. But in this place, we need to create new models of exchange and creative inquiry. Within our congregations, like I said, you know, in unity, every time we assemble, we sing, "Let there be peace on earth, and let that peace begin with me." So it's taking responsibility as an individual, and that you, as an individual, within your own consciousness, wherever you go, you take the peace with you. You become a conduit of peace. You can't look for peace outside yourself when you haven't got it within you. So peace has to begin consciously within you, and through the peace that is within you, you are able to self-direct that peace to your community. So within our congregation, we need to acknowledge and reaffirm human diversity by creating a spirit of openness and a spirit of peace within our own congregations, where all people may find acceptance, where all people may find acceptance and the opportunity to share their giftedness. Spiritual activism is part of social transformation, and I'm calling it spiritual activism. It was Gandhi who said, before we take our next step, let us ask ourselves the question, how will this affect the weakest and the most vulnerable amongst us? How does this pandemic affect the weakest and the most vulnerable amongst us? If we can ask that question, then we move from that consciousness of oneness. We move from that consciousness of social compassionate transformation. You see, social justice and the practice of peace go hand in hand. You cannot have social justice without the practice of peace, without making peace practical. Women and children in any nation, in any culture, and in any religion must have the same right to safety and security and equitable opportunities. What does that mean to us as interfaith within this context? It means we have to stand up to care. We have to stand up to share. And we have to stand up to dare to find solutions to the challenges of violence against women and children. We have to stand up to care, to share, and to dare find solutions to homelessness, to food insecurity, to health services, and to the emotional distress that is in our community. That is, to me, in summary, what the essence, what it means to making peace real, to making peace practical, realizing that our lives are linked, we are joined together. What we do impacts on everyone. The power to create social change governed by peace and our common good lies within each individual consciousness. And so let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Thank you, Rev Thandi. Thank you for those powerful words and reminding us how interconnected we are in this whole experience. I think at this time where, you know, we've been physically distant, or encouraged to be physically distant, it's really brought out how we're all deeply connected at a different level.
Yes.
And I so agree with you and just appreciate your acknowledgement of the connection between social justice and the practice of peace,
Yes.
as one cannot exist without the other. And at the same time, how it has to start with the self. So I'm looking forward to, with our panelists, getting more into what that personal peace looks like for each of you. But before we do, let's have our third panelist, Brother John Ndiritu, who is an associate professor at Wits and a professional civil engineer. He has 27 years of meditation experience with the Brahma Kumaris and is currently coordinating the Brahma Kumaris Center in Soweto. Brother John, it's such an honor to have you here with us, and thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing your perspective on the current crisis and pandemic moment and what it means for us from our different spiritual traditions. Thank you.
Thandi and Rabbi and everyone else for being in this panel. So I'm happy to be part of the panel.
Thank you.
So I actually started meditating 28 years ago. It was 28 years ago, a few days ago. So, and that was in 1992. I was a student, a postgraduate student, but the main thing that was disturbing me was the state of the world. I could see we are fighting so much. We are not interested in maintaining peace. We are polluting the environment. We are degrading the forests. We are polluting the water. And I used to feel that, you know, the world is in such a chaotic state, is in such a, you know, a dire state. I mean, that long ago. But even those who are studying about how human development is happening and what is being focused into the future were not painting a very good picture. So when I started meditating I started experiencing the peace, of course, but also understanding what the spiritual knowledge is based on and how it thinks about what is happening to the globe, then I found lots of understanding, and all the stress that was causing me more or less faded away. And maybe that's what I want to share. What did I find? You know, I found that, you know, as a globe, as humanity, we have more or less become very spiritually degraded. The power of peace, the power of truth, the power to relating with each other, with ourselves, and with nature in a right, peaceful, harmonious way has depleted a lot. And it's more or less a natural process that happens. And it is only that now we are in that state. And I found that, you know, that's part of our understanding. And that then this is a time for renewal. So the time where we have to start replenishing our spiritual power through understanding about who we are. So the human being is the spirit within the body. And the nature of that spirit is to be peaceful, to be loving, to be joyful. But that is what we had lost. That has been depleted over time. And the time to renew that is now, which means, but this is also the time, on the other hand, where the effects of all the ways in which we have related with ourselves, with others, with nature, is coming to bear on us in a very heavy manner. And when I think about COVID-19, the pandemic, that is just one of them, because even prior to the pandemic, it is not that, you know, we were in a very good state in so many ways. But even after the pandemic, I mean, the challenges that we are facing, whether it is climate change, whether it is all the wars and the conflicts on all levels, I mean, they'll still be there. But we understand that this to be the time where these unsustainable ways of dealing with, of living and of being, has to give way to a more sustainable order. And the basis of that is to replenish ourselves. I, the soul, have to come back to that awareness about who I am. And I think most importantly, which relates to this beautiful song that we are dancing to so much nowadays. It's about connecting with God in a very easy and natural way, like a parent connects with a child connects with the parent, and drawing God's energy, which is like an ocean of peace and love and purity and everything else, so that we can, in a natural way, replenish ourselves and help to replenish others and help to then guide the world to a better space. I think in summary, that's what I would say for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother John. A time of replenishing and renewal definitely resonates with me, hearing you say that, and recognizing that the challenges of our world continue to be there before and after, and so how do we again start within. So yeah, thank you so much for your sharing. We have our fourth panelist with us. Tahirih Matthee is here, and so I will introduce her, and then Tahirih, I will share with you what has been shared so far. But Tahirih is the Interfaith Liaison Officer for the Baha'i Office of Public Affairs for the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of South Africa. She is a recognized and renowned leader for the Baha'i community of South Africa, having served in different capacities since 1985, when she formed part of the Baha'is delegation who presented the peace statement of the highest Baha'i institution, the Universal House of Justice, to prominent people to the then apartheid government of South Africa. Since then, she's been involved in the Parliament of the World's Religions, the Cape Town Interfaith Initiative, the Western Cape Religious Leaders Forum, and many other bodies and initiatives promoting multi-faith cooperation and community action. And so it's an honor to have a panel who are so invested in multi-faith work and interfaith collaboration. I think that's the richness of our, definitely part of the richness of our conversation today. So Tahirih, your thoughts on just how the current moment of COVID and the pandemic is being understood from our different religious and spiritual traditions. How have you been able to make sense of the time that the world is in at the moment? The floor is yours.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and greetings of peace to everyone present tonight. I also apologize. I was battling to connect with the group tonight. So my sense is, Sarah, you're still discussing the first question of the three?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so my sense, Sarah, of where we are now is that the first thing that came to mind is that God has spoken to us directly through the virus. We've had this shake-up moment. We've had time to pause, to reflect, hopefully attempts, at restoring the balance. I was amazed at some of the images I saw after a few weeks, clean air in certain cities around the world that really, really warmed my heart. And it was a delight to my eyes to actually see some of that visual, change just in the color of the sky in some of the cities that have been so gray and dull with pollution. Also pondering on that question, I think in this time, more and more we've become aware of our oneness and the interrelatedness of our existence on the planet. It's been real. People feel it, people talk about it. And what was for me very, very uplifting also is that our true identity, and even yesterday I had an opportunity in another interfaith meeting just to reflect on we as human beings, we are soul entities long before we are these connection of bones and sinews and neurological, connections in our bodies. We are soul entities. And this was a moment for us to tap into that into our true identity. And it's also a time where one gets to hear the concerns of people, but also in an amazing sense, you see resilience. And I've been amazed at some of the best efforts that I've seen amongst people. There was a time we were handing out food parcels and organizing care for people, and very, very sweetly, someone who had very little, said to me very softly, "Don't give me the full amount, take some of mine and see if you can help someone else." And that to me was very, very, very moving. But I think, if anything, this period has also been a period of much hope. And in terms of, the discourse around peace, as a Baha'i, in our scriptures, we hold very fast to the belief that humanity is on a path of maturation. And we see the peace that will come to the world as a collective effort. It's an inevitable part of our existence on the planet. We can only exist here in a meaningful way if we work as a team. And the Baha'i belief is that, the most great peace shall come. And during the COVID time, when I saw some of these wonderful gestures from people, it really gave me an inkling of hope into that broader cycle that we are engaged in, this collective working together because we are maturing as humanity. What we've seen in the previous centuries is the childlike rebellious behavior of humanity. And some of that behavior is certainly still around. We've got a bit of work to do. But I think, if anything, COVID showed us kind of both sides of it. And so I remain a very hopeful member of society that we've got all this goodness in us, and that humanity as a collective can get to the point where we can serve the cause of unity and peace and really mature in understanding how we achieve the common good. So I thought also, just tonight, when I was battling to join with you, I was also just thinking of how the technology was such a wonderful advancement, that when people wanted to be together prayerfully, we could actually make use of the technology for that purpose of connection, to connect soulfully. And I was quite amazed how that need for prayer made even older people take the time to learn how some of this actually works, so that they could replenish their souls and have that sense of connection. So I thought I would just share some of that, Sarah. I had the impression that we all have about 2 to 3 minutes to kind of comment on the first question.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Tahirih, for that sharing. And I'm sorry you had struggles connecting, but I'm so glad that you got here.
Yeah, thank you.
It's wonderful to have you as part of this conversation, and just very much similarities across all of what has been shared about the kind of restorative moment that this is, and how it is bringing and connecting us with our true identities, and also differences across what you've all just shared, which I think is the beauty of multi-faith dialogue, being able to sit with those differences of perspectives from our different religious traditions. So thank you for that. I will just say, for those who are in the Zoom room with us, there will be a chance for questions. So if you do have a question and want to put it in the chat, please do. But I'll go on to the next question, which is, some of you have touched on this already, and so I want to see this as an opportunity to go deeper with your sharings, and particularly around making them real for you and real for all of us to hear and be present with. And so many of you have spoken about how important peace is in terms of our inner peace, to be able to create peace with the world. The beautiful song, Thandi, that you shared, may peace and let it begin with me, is the invitation. And so I would love to know what personal peace practices have kept you grounded and centered during this time, and helped to really, what has helped you to maintain that inner stability. So we'll move around again in the same order, if that's okay. Rabbi, I'll start with you.
Hey, okay, thanks. And thanks for what you shared. It's good to hear. It's like assuring what you, all of my colleagues, all three, what you were saying, very assuring. Good. So, okay, I'll keep it short. Personally, I started to broadcast services. It was like a big thing. So first I started to broadcast daily services, which I wasn't doing before. I was doing my own mornings davening in the garden. Now I started like 7 o'clock, I'm broadcasting, and there are suddenly people. Not many, by the way, because it's like for advanced, okay? So, Hebrew. So it's like it's the inside outside, okay? It's like my spirituality, and it's online, and I'm even before there was an element of performance in my spirituality, but now it's like with the technology. So, and then there's the Shabbat praise, and then there is the high holidays praise. Now, this week, last week, and next week, we never done such thing before. It's like it's revolutionary, but it's also we do the same. Okay, it's like the same order and the same. So it's the spirit in the vessel, containing the spirit in the vessel, and presence. So there's focal and then there's cluster. People don't drive to Parktown to see me, to pray with me. They don't have to drive to Parktown to pray with me. I'm here. So the focal holding the space of the spirit, and then suddenly people who moved, people in Canada, in Israel, in America, and my parents, suddenly they can join. It's like change everything. What is community? Everything changed in that. Okay. So that's one thing, like where the spirit comes, where you let it in, where the spirit can come, where you let it in, you have to let it in. Second, yoga. So we used to have in the synagogue a group, me and the ladies, and that stopped. So it took me a while, and now I'm kind of practicing regular daily, my own yoga. It's okay, it's happening. And it's an ongoing, it's an ongoing thing, and the yoga is very important to me. And finally, there's no separation between the rabbi and me. Who is the person that my wife and my kids meet? Who is the person that my community meets? There's not like the spiritual life and the real life. It's the same me and it's the same life. So that's what you have to work with. And then who is the person that the other side meets? So if I'm losing it on my kids, if I'm, whatever the case may be, with all the human faults, be aware of that and enhance it. It's all part of the spiritual journey. You cannot detour it. So that's the personal testimony I can bring.
Brilliant, thank you so much. That really resonates with me, the connection between our spiritual lives and who we are as people, and just that's got to be deeply connected and authentic. Otherwise it's not real. And definitely it connects with what Tahirih was saying about the different ways that our religious communities and spiritual communities have had to move into this online space, and what prayer and spirituality looks like in a different way. And but there's that connection has still been there in terms of the practice and keeping it going, which is beautiful. So thank you for those personal sharings, Rabbi. Rev Thandi, can we hear from you? What have been some of the ways that you've kept grounded and maintained inner peace at this time?
Okay, let me. One of the unity principles, basic, is God is omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence. And, you know, the omnipresence is the presence of God everywhere, you being also the part of that presence. And what really came alive for me during this time is people can be present with one another despite the social distancing. And I really got the meaning and the practical application of omnipresence. When the corona, you know, when the virus began, I remember we had had a very successful International Women's Day on the 8th of March. And we had planned to have events in our community. And we actually had overseas people from the United States who actually were participating in this event. And when we heard that, you know, it was at that time when the corona was saying, you know, it was through travel and internet contacts with tourists. And the first reaction was, oh my gosh, we've just had contact with so many tourists. What's going to happen? Possibly, you know, we might have, because the masking and the social distancing, we had not yet heard of such things. And then within a week, you know, we had lockdown and our services were always like in-house, people coming in. And now we had to be able to connect. We remained spiritually connected, even though we were physically, you know, apart. So it was just amazing how we kept, actually we were even able to attract more people now that we recognize the omnipresence. The omnipresence became so recognizable because we felt that, you know, right now you are in Cape Town and somebody else is in Joburg. We might have people from overseas, but we're all interconnected. So, and each one of us is that spirit, you know, so we are powerful spiritual beings living in a spiritual universe governed by spiritual laws. So we don't need to be physically present, because if we are omnipresent, we can be present everywhere. And technology and this period has actually revealed to us that, you know, we truly can be omnipresent and we can be interconnected. So that is what we practice. So we continued with our services, our Sunday services. We continued to have powerful classes. We just finished a class on the 12 powers. It was so amazing that, you know, we didn't need people to drive in and come to a certain place in order to experience our spiritual education classes. We're able to do spiritual education classes. We're able to do movements, all, you know, within the period. Actually, we were able to do more during this period of the pandemic than we had before, when people had to physically come to a space. So that's what we learned. And also meditation. It's omnipresence. You know, God is present everywhere, right where we are. We can interconnect. We learned the groundedness of spirit. We can have a person in their own home conducting a very powerful meditation that we connect into without them being here. So we're able to maintain our spiritual community, and we were able also to go beyond our spiritual community, because we realize that, you know, we are not confined to space and time. We are not confined to space and time. We can be present anywhere at any time. So that is what works for us. And that's how we kept the inner balance and the soul of unity.
beautifully said, Rev. Thandi. I think, thank you for making that connection between the omnipresence of God and our own presence in spaces, and how it's one and the same. It's in a similar way to what the Rabbi shared as well, the creativity that's flourished in religious spaces about how to conduct services virtually, and still hold that deep sense of spirituality and connection, has definitely been one of the inspiring things that has come out of this period. So those are fantastic examples. We'll go to Brother John Ndiritu. What has for you been important of personal peace practices?
What have I been practicing? Probably there was not much of a difference between what I've been practicing now during the pandemic and what I've been practicing maybe the last 27, 28 years. And because I view the pandemic as one of those things, and the practice is to do it. The practice is for ensuring that whatever challenges come, however they are going to come, as many more may come in the future, always stable. And that's what the meditation practice and the spiritual understanding enables one to try and achieve in the best possible way. So, yeah, so what is a practice of meditation? It's this awareness that I'm this living being within this human form. So, the soul, you see the soul whose nature is peace, love, joyful, the soul that is powerful. And this body is like my vehicle, and I'm that wonderful living being within. And a good time to practice this is usually early in the morning. So I have this practice of being up by 4 a.m. in the morning, and having this practice of myself as this eternal spiritual being, and connecting with the supreme being, who is like the ocean or like the sun. So I'm like simply basking in this beautiful being, in the light of this beautiful being, and absorbing all that energy. So that I have found that over the years has provided me with lots of, this energy of peace. And actually part of the practice, not just during this pandemic, but over the years, is also to then spread this peace to the world. As Rev. Thandi says, you may be in one place, but whatever you are, the energy you have, spreads out to the unlimited. So it's a practice that I've had for over the years. So I have simply been reinforcing it as time carries on, and that's what I've been doing. And I mean, it keeps me stable, gives me my inner stability, it makes me feel peaceful, and maybe enable others also to have peaceful feeling in our interactions. But also, in addition to that, we have classes in our organization. We have daily classes, classes about the spiritual laws, about the spiritual principles, about what one may need to practice in order to remain happy, peaceful, and not create problems for oneself and others. And also to pay attention that the external factors and complications and challenges and all sorts of things that may be coming to one, and there are so many of them, because as an individual, as I am here, I mean, I don't really know what challenges I'm going to face in the next 1 minute or even the next 1 hour. But if I can learn to live from inside out, which is what is part of the practice. So I'm the soul, and I have this energy of peace, energy of love, energy of happiness. And that is what I can use in my life to live my life. So, and I can then contribute to a peaceful world by living in that way and not allowing the external things to impinge on me and disturb my peace. So part of the classes and the practice involve all of that. And that is simply what I have carried on during the pandemic, and I hope to carry on even thereafter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. It's a good reminder that our inner peace practices are what keep us constant and stable before or after, whatever the challenges are. You know, these are the parts of ourselves that are most true and authentic, and therefore to keep them solid and stable, particularly at times when there might be a lot of chaos going around in the world, is important. So I'm glad to hear that has been successful for you in your practice. Tahirih, it would be lovely to hear from you next.
Thank you, Siri. Yes, I can hear from the three wonderful people already answering this, that clearly they've been on a wonderful path also in terms of their practices. Sarah, I'm going to be just very honest with you, and the gathering here this evening. The whole, lockdown experience, all of it coming so suddenly. The one day I was at a school still planning things with students and a principal. And literally the next day I was at home with 10 other people on my property. And all of that presented some challenges because normally in my household, people go to work and then I'm here and then I get to do the things I do, write or carry on with my research or prepare things for the Baha'i community. So it was really weird. The first week of lockdown was really something. And so the first thing I have on my list is really that for Baha'is, we have our obligatory prayers that we do every day, and that's really just part of your spiritual routine. But I found I had to do a lot more, more than the obligatory prayers, because it was really an unusual situation for me. 9 other people on the property every day. Everybody was now working from home. There's literally no place to hide. And so really like in my household, people's bedrooms became their offices. Companies came in and set up the equipment, and it was now just a completely different world. I had now house and work things going on at the same time. So so I don't even want to pretend in any way that I had the foggiest idea as to how to deal with all of it. And so in a big way, I turned to more prayers, and thank heavens my husband had this lovely idea of putting this bench in the garden so I could just sit there and meditate at times. And then a lovely young lady was stranded. She's from KZN, and there was no way for her to get home. And I had a sweet message from somebody, can you please help out? We need a place for someone because she really can't travel now. And so I had this lovely person in my home that I had not met before. And together we started doing yoga and more walks. And we had long talks about what this all means for us. And it was wonderful to have these conversations with the young people on my property. And we had lovely ideas. In fact, my Facebook posts are full of, I think I've got like 90 days of posts of what we did every day. And I had people all over the world writing to me, we love this, keep doing this. Help us get through what we need to get through because we're learning from what you're doing. So that was very, 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 very encouraging. We learned to plant all sorts of things. Although I have a battle with snails now, but this was an interesting time where I could see even young people were grappling with, what to do with the time on their hands and so on. They're not going to school. The institutions, the tertiary institutions didn't have their act together in any way for any of this. And so my circumstances were rather unusual. but joyfully so. I can happily say now I've learned to live with 9 other people in unity and joy. Although in the beginning it was quite a story to even just wrap my head around it, you know, like how are we going to get through this day? I think the inner peace came for me more from more prayer. And then in the Baha'i community, we have these institute courses, and they really community building courses. Some of it focuses on children, some on youth, some on the life of the soul. And I found in this time that the book on the life of the soul was actually revised. And so I joined a refresher group, and it was wonderful to do that with a group of people, young and old, just through the refresher course, again, just seriously looking at who are we in this realm here on this earth, you know, what is it we're here for, you know, what is the soul, and how do we develop the soul and the nobility of our being. So that became quite a bit of inner work for me, and I was really, really grateful for that opportunity. And then I actually started missing my interfaith work, connecting, and at some point government realized that they couldn't do all this work by themselves, and they formed this interfaith forum. And I was connected by one of the people in government to join on the Friday meeting, Friday afternoons. We didn't meet every Friday afternoon, although that was the intention. But I felt a sense of purpose in that also, in trying to advise what to do on the ground when people were struggling and so on. And so for me, you know, a lot of the peace came, a lot of the inner peace came also from that servitude, from doing something for others and with others. And the other aspects of this inner peace was definitely the confirmation that came to me from a lot of people saying, you know, we value the weekly prayer, you know, a session that you have on Zoom that's open to everyone, and that really made me feel good. And I made a concerted effort also to do a bit of introspection in terms of, you know, what is healthy eating, what is healthy living, to incorporate that component of peace also into my life, you know, understanding that our bodies are also peaceful when we do certain other practical things. And so I learned a lot more about that component of peace, more about wholesome living, wholesome eating, wholesome cooking. And then last but not least, I make the connection between peace and laughter. And so for me, a part of the day was spent sitting with family members and just having a good laugh, doing a bit of comedy, not focusing too much on the news, but just having a good time of laughter with family members, and of course the young lady that had joined our family. And that, I think, for me would be some of the practical components of my life that brought this really. I feel content. I'm in spite of the virus doing what, you know, whatever havoc it created, the panic in society. I'm at a good place personally in my life. Although, like when I started talking to you, it was consternation, you know, the last week of March, trying to figure out how do I live peacefully through this lockdown with so many other people in my space. But I'm very grateful to God for this opportunity, and I'm sure I have a lot more to learn. but I'm definitely feeling grounded in the prayerful practice and the meditation, and having had the opportunity to reconnect through the revised Rui Book 1, which focuses on the life of the soul. Yes, I'm really grateful that I could experience this kind of inner peace. And thank you for the opportunity, because I didn't realize, I actually said I didn't realize my own growth journey until I saw the 3 questions and I started putting it, on paper just as points, reflecting. And so I'm really grateful for that question.
No, thank you, Tahirih, for that answer as well. I think just the learnings that have happened for all of us have been quite remarkable, and I appreciate your honesty as well in just how difficult parts of it are, and I can imagine living with 9 is a really good practice in harmony. Yes. And learning how to do that. But definitely for all of you who and sharing, I just want to acknowledge the kind of different personal experiences that have been shared, and the work that you're doing both at an individual level but also at a community level, in terms of creating that space for others. So it's just an honor to hear the different experiences. We have time for one more question possibly, and I do have one more question, but I would love to give space to maybe somebody else who is here in the room if there's a question that would like to be asked or put in the chat. I know this puts our panelists a little bit on the spot, but I'm certain they can handle it. If there is, now would be a moment if you would like to either put it in the chat or raise your hand. I'll give a moment. Otherwise, we'll do a quick round with our last question before wrapping up. I'm just having a look. I think. Okay, possibly a question will come in, and we'll see if there's time for it. But yeah, I guess as we have about 5, 6, maybe 7 minutes left, and so I'll ask each of you just to very quickly in a minute or two share. I think what's the richness of this conversation so far has been that the way you've described the kind of personal learnings and personal experiences that you've had, and when it comes to creating peace in the world, it's very clear how much work we still have to do, and so the question was around the transformational power of peace and where you've seen that in your lives and in your communities, and so what experiences or examples come to mind when you think about the transformational power of peace, particularly as we honor International Day of Peace and the theme of shaping peace together, which is exactly what we're doing here. So in 1 or 2 minutes, your responses. Yes, Rabbi, thank you.
Okay, maybe it's good that I don't have a lot of time to talk about it. I saw this question, I was a bit amused, because those who know me know that I'm usually not talking about my experience and work and years in the Middle East, because I've discovered that people have a lot of thoughts and ideas in the Middle East, and I not always have the time or the possibility to educate, or so I'm just not talking about it much. Yet this question is like, where have I made transformational peace power? So I have to come back to my years in the Middle East and tell you that I am a link, and there's a lot of activity in the field. So if it's Haifa and the beautiful things happening in Wadi Nisnas. I was walking in Haifa, you see the Baha'i people, the Thurs people, the beautiful Muslim community there and Christian community, and the way that we walk in neighborhoods there. If it's the Soha Peace Project gatherings, which were amazing. And by the way, you or I, we were in touch with them in the time when there's people coming together because there's listening circles, and the bereaved family circle, the combatants for peace, the earth element, the making food together, sorting it together, the pray, the dance, the tent of Sarah and Hagar, the interfaith pray space, the intellect part, the young activists talking about the theories and know-how in conflict resolution and human rights and community building and restorative justice. The young people coming and imagining the future. And I want to say that there is a lot of strong yearn for peace in Israel-Palestine. And now, as we speak, there are many people who walk and push to that direction. And it's my comrades. I'm coming from them. It's like my heart is there, and one of my thoughts is how I can support them more and sustain them more. And the main thing is that we hear them, and we're with them. And it's still happening now. There's like protests, there's people coming together, and part of it is a mature understanding of clergy that's working together. Clergy, social workers, educators, spiritual activism, as you've said. Anyhow, I've seen it.
Thank you, Rabbi. I can feel that right in the heart of what that experience is like. So thank you for bringing that in. And such an important global example of where transformational peace is happening and needs to continue to happen. So thank you.
And unsorted. This business is unsorted. It's like on us to take on,
Yeah, and it really requires all of us to step into that space and to be working together in it. So thank you for that. Rev Thandi, let's go to you for a closing example.
With myself. Yes, just before the International Day of Prayer, International Day of Peace, in Unity we had an international, a World Day of Prayer. And during the World Day of Prayer, the affirmation was standing on truth. Standing on truth, I now move from fear to faith. I want to share this particularly because there's been so much fear, amongst, throughout the world, fear of the pandemic and fear. I mean, we saw in the US, the Black Lives Matter, the racism, all the things that have been going on. And these are upheavals, these are transformational times. And these are times where we have to stand on truth, to stand on knowing that we are agents of transformation. And we can only be agents of transformation when we within ourselves carry that inner peace. And that is not a sign of weakness to be peaceful. It's actually its peace is a very powerful weapon to fight injustice, because we are not, it's like not fighting people, but fighting injustice in itself. And so there comes the transformational power of peace in standing up for justice. And during the World Day of Prayer, like I said, we affirm standing in our truth, moving from fear to faith. Faith in humanity. Faith in our own transformational power to actually create the type of society that we want, to create the world of peace that we envision. So the transformational power of peace lies within our own self. We do have that power to collectively create. So during the World Day of Prayer, we actually had virtual candles, and we had the whole map of the world. And anyone, we could see a person would actually light a virtual candle wherever they were in the world. And, through technology, we were able to see all these candles. Would look into South Africa, would see a candle in, there's a candle in PE, a candle in Puerto Rico, you'd see. And then when they were all done, it was on the 20th and the 20th and the 21st of September. And, seeing all these virtual candles that were lighted throughout the world when people were praying, for peace, and people were praying, for moving from fear to faith, carrying that transformational message throughout the world. Whilst you are still in your own home, you could actually light a candle for peace. So, and we also had this recognition that each one of us, regardless, where we come from or what we do, each one of us is the light of the world. You could literally see that we are the light of the world. And when we shine, the light that we are, when we shine, the light that we are, you do not diminish your light by, like a candle. A candle's light does not get diminished by lighting another candle. And so as we allow our own light to radiate throughout the world, to step up and be the light that you are meant to be, that is the transformational power of peace. And recognize that each one of us is bringing a spiritual power. Each one of us is bringing this transformational power, because there's many aspects to it. Peace it's very multidimensional. There's very many aspects to it, and it is in recognizing that each one of us is that virtual candle that brings with, the radiancy, the light, the ability to light up other candles without actually diminishing your own light. So this is what we did in unity, in the transformational power for peace, because we carry the peace within us. I often say you cannot see the peace in the world when you are not carrying it with you. So it is a state of consciousness, and it has to come from within you. And the more each one of us realizes the light that we are, the more each one of us realizes the power within us that we carry individually, the more we can change or raise collective consciousness.
Thank you so much, Rev Thandi. There's so much in there that I want to respond to, and I love it. But just the strong, connection of justice. But we'll pass the candle and the lights to Brother John, since we're talking about that. Yes.
So the question is about the experience, examples of the transformational power of peace. I mean, I was thinking about this question, and I thought the transformational power that I have experienced personally is very subtle. And the reason is that having the power of peace means that in the disturbances, in the challenges, in the issues coming from outside, I'm able to process them in a very nice way internally. So I don't react to things, but this coming, so I have peace. I'm able to I'm stable. I'm not disturbed. I can process it within. And if I need to dissolve it, I can dissolve it because I have the power of peace. And in that peace, I don't need to respond in any way to anything. And if I need to respond, I can also feel, this response is coming from a right space from within. So I can respond. And if I feel that's not the case, I can say, okay, I have this ability to be patient, to wait, to say, I need to look at this a bit more. Let me just be quiet. Let me wait for the right time and have a response in the right way. So I have found that that ability has increased personally over time. When things come And there are many things that can. Could be things about racial profiling, bullying based on that. Could be things at work where people don't understand why you're taking too long to do what you need to do, even during the lockdown. And but when one is peaceful, it doesn't create a disturbance. So, you know, this thing of having no buttons for anyone to push. You know, I'm learning from inside out. No one is going to push my buttons and disturb my inner peace. So that is something I've experienced. And but more generally, I usually think that any time when conflicts get resolved and people start working together, of course, that's the transformational power of peace. Because how can that happen if they don't have that peace within themselves? So I think it happens all the time. It's the nature of every human being to be peaceful and not to be otherwise. And I think that is what you know, is happening, and maybe needs to happen even more. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother John. Well, because of time, come straight to Tahirih, and then I'll wrap us up. Thank you, Tahirih.
Thank you, Sarah. I thought that I would share for this question a very simple but powerful, in my mind, powerful example. About 20 kilometers from where I live, there's a little housing development, an RDP housing development. And in that development are some people that I've met over the years. And one of the ladies was very agitated and feeling very concerned about her son and his friends and so on. And so she made an appointment with me on a Monday at 1 o'clock. So I would leave my house, go to her house, say some prayers with her. And often she would, you know, in those conversations, she would say to me, very concerned about, you know, my son, he's so restless. You know, I want him to calm down and so on and so on. And I just gently said, you know, maybe this is a conversation we should gently have with him. And maybe if he feels that he can benefit from some classes, you know, perhaps we can see where that takes us. And to cut a long story short, the son was very open to it because he also felt, you know, he's not in a good space in his life. He wants to be more in touch with the good things of this life. And so he went through the courses and eventually became such a beacon of hope. I mean, he is such a calm and collected person right now. And I just look at that person example, and I think as a young person, he's got a lot of influence in that community now. He's a good example of how one can turn your back on these negative forces in society if you're just given an opportunity to get to understand, you know, the inner nature, our inner being, and have that communion and that closeness with God. And I think sometimes it's just, for me, it's about walking a path with one person, walking that path of service with one person and being there on that path, and then joyfully seeing the nobility of that soul just blossoming and that person becoming well grounded in peace.
Yes.
And so my example is very simple because it's real. It's something I see all the time. I see this young man all the time, and I see the impact that he has on other people. And I constantly remind myself that our efforts needn't be grandiose. If we touch one person with our own peace, if the peace in my heart can touch one other person, and that person embodies that peace, you know, and then becomes an instrument for another person, then this circle of peace grows. And it's a wonderful way of also looking at it, because this happens to be a boy, a young man. And in our society, we're so worried. We talk about gender-based violence. People ask what's happening to our men. People ask who's helping our men to understand this inner peace, that they can own. And so for me, it's relevant. Everything about that one simple case is relevant. This young man might have a partner one day, and he's going to be a peace-loving person. He's going to be somebody that's not going to beat up his wife. There's a chance of that being a well-connected family. So I'm moved by that. It encourages me to want to do more of those junior youth classes with other young people, and especially young men. People say men are not in touch with themselves emotionally, and our country is so violent and so on. But I think these efforts, this outreach to young people is so important. And when it works beautifully, because I'm no longer needed. I'm not needed. It's not imposed, because the young man owns it. He's the owner of that. He's embodied it, and he can encourage others. So I thought that was worth mentioning. Keep it simple but real.
Thank you, Tahirih. That's a beautiful example to end off our discussion with, of just the impact that we can make with one individual. And I think I see there's a question in the chat here on Zoom about, is it enough? Are we enough? Can we change the world? And I think this conversation has moved through the balance of hope, but also recognizing the challenges and the devastation that exists. And I think that's a constant road that we're walking. So thank you to all of you for being on this journey with us, and this journey of this conversation. I feel like we've had a little Zoom window into each of your lives, and the worlds and communities that you're working to transform, both at an individual level and a community level. So thank you for sharing the examples and helping to ground us in what it means to make peace real. I think so often these conversations of peace can be very wafty a little bit, but I think that we've covered quite a lot of ground in this short time together of some really great examples of making it real. So and also just the learning for me of this constant moving between the piece at the inner level and then the piece at a global level, which is connected to issues of social justice and human rights, and the transformation that needs to happen both in our world and in ourselves. And you're all incredible examples of that. So thank you for spending this time with us, and thank you to the Brahma Kumaris for hosting this beautiful gathering. I will hand back to Sister Nita, who is going to close our time together, but from my side, much appreciation.
Okay.
Sister Nita, are you there?
I'm here. Sorry,
okay.
Technically challenged at times.
Good.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to all our speakers. We'd just like to finish this evening or close off this evening with just holding that space of peace that you also beautifully spoke about. So I'm just going to lead you into a meditation now. So as we sit here, let's take this moment to gather our thoughts and just come back to that place of quiet stillness. And I focus my attention inwards. Let me imagine myself holding that candle of peace in my heart. the light that burns bright, that holds silence and deep compassion of peace. I hold that candle. And in the quiet stillness of my mind and my heart, I allow the expression of that peace to emerge within my being. And just in this moment, imagine that every part of your body is radiating with this energy and light of peace. That I become that candle of peace. And this energy, this light, begins to radiate outwardly. And as this light spreads out, I see it illuminating everything. I am centered. I'm holding that energy. And then very gently, I take my attention and my awareness to the divine, the one that is remembered as the ocean of light, of love, and yes, of peace. And as I lovingly turn my thoughts and bring my heart into this beautiful relationship, I feel the presence of God's peace. And it just increases the peace that I hold within my heart. So that together with the divine's purest energy and God's benevolent nature, I become the instrument to share His love, His peace, His light. And so again, just imagine for a moment your light intensifying with His light, becoming a beacon of hope, of possibilities, of togetherness as one. Let me hold this for a moment, keeping that connection, that beautiful link with the divine, and sharing that with my world family. I hold peace, I hold love, and I hold light. These are the only things that reverberate within my being. There is only peace, light, and love. Just become that for this moment and hold it. And I invite you that as we continue with our day and evening, let's keep this candle of peace alive. Recognize that we can create the impact that we want as individuals, but definitely collectively when we hold that pure intention. So let me go out into the world with a reminder that I am this beacon of God's light, His love, and His peace. Om Shanti. Thank you. So thank you for joining us this evening and really sharing your time and your precious words with us. And it just gives me such a feeling of hope that there's amazing individuals doing amazing work, and collectively, definitely, we can create the shift that you want. And a very, very special thank you, Sarah, for holding the space so beautifully and just bringing in that beautiful energy that you hold. So thank you very much. Good night, have a lovely evening, and take care. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers. Shalom. Shalom. Shana Tova. Happy New Year. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, Rabbi. Happy New Year.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Peace and blessings.
Thank you.